Before there were borders, before there were flags, before there were names given by strangers to lands that already had names, there was this. Red earth, open sky, the wind moving through grass so ancient it remembers the footsteps of the first. This is the Great Rift Valley, and this, all of this, is where it began. Not just for one people, not just for one tribe or one nation, for every single human being who has ever drawn breath on this earth. The science is now irrefutable. The DNA does not lie. Every human alive today traces their lineage back to Africa, back to her soil, back to her rivers, back to her firelit nights and her thunderous dawns. We did not come from Africa. We are Africa, and she has been waiting, patiently, powerfully, for the world to remember. Kofi had traveled across oceans. He had lived in cities that never slept, spoken languages that were not his first, and worn identities handed to him by a world that never asked where he was truly from. He carried a journal full of questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why does this disconnection feel like a wound that never fully heals? He was not alone in asking. Millions carry this same ache, a hollowness shaped exactly like a homeland they have never seen, but somehow always known. He had come back, not to a specific village or a specific name. He had come back to the continent itself, to stand on the earth and feel for the first time that the ground beneath his feet was not indifferent to him, that it knew him, that it had always known him. Amara had heard the news about the scientists and their research. She had listened carefully when the young people read to her from their devices about genetic mapping and haplogroups and mitochondrial Eve. And when they finished, she had smiled, not a small smile, but a deep, full smile that came from somewhere ancient. She said, "They have finally found what we have always known." Because the elders never needed a laboratory to understand what the blood already carried. The stories were always there, passed from grandmother to granddaughter, from elder to child. The firelight and the songs and the way a mother holds her baby and whispers the names of those who came before. The science did not discover Africa's truth, it confirmed it. And there is a difference, a profound, important difference between discovery and confirmation. 70,000 years ago, perhaps more, a human hand pressed itself against a cave wall, ochre and charcoal, breath and intention, and left a mark that said, "I was here, I existed, I mattered." These are not primitive scratches. These are the first declarations of identity in human history, the first art, the first storytelling, the first insistence that a life, a people, a moment in time deserved to be remembered. Long before any other civilization raised its first stone, African hands were already writing the story of humanity on the walls of the earth. The diversity of these early peoples was extraordinary. Not a single group, not a single culture, but a rich, complex, varied tapestry of languages, traditions, and ways of knowing. Modern DNA research confirms that the greatest genetic diversity on Earth exists within Africa, not between Africa and the rest of the world, but within Africa itself. The continent is not the beginning of one story. It is the beginning of all stories. They built along rivers, they studied the stars, they mapped the seasons and the floods and the movements of animals across the land. They developed mathematics, medicine, architecture, and philosophy long before these disciplines had names in any other tongue. The Nile did not just carry water, it carried civilization, it carried knowledge, it carried the ambitions of a people who looked at the world and decided to understand it, to shape it, to leave it more ordered and more beautiful than they found it. And when some of their descendants eventually walked out of Africa, following coastlines, crossing land bridges, moving slowly across millennia into every corner of the globe, they carried all of this with them, in their bodies, in their minds, in the invisible architecture of their DNA. Every human being alive today is, in the most literal biological sense, a descendant of Africa's diverse and brilliant peoples. This is not poetry, this is genetics, this is fact. Kofi sat by the fire for a long time. He did not write, he did not speak. He simply sat with the weight of what he was beginning to understand, that the disconnection he had carried his entire life was not a permanent condition. It was a wound, and wounds, when properly tended, can heal. He thought about the millions of people who looked like him, scattered across the world by history's cruelest chapters, by slavery, by colonization, by the violent erasure of names and languages and traditions. He thought about how those systems had tried to sever people from their They tried to make them believe they came from nothing. They tried to make them forget. But the body does not forget. The blood does not forget. The DNA carries the memory of every ancestor who ever lived, loved, suffered, and endured. And no empire, no matter how brutal, has ever been powerful enough to erase what is written in the very cells of a people. Amara looked at Kofi the way grandmothers look at children who have finally come home. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly in a voice like the earth itself. "You did not lose yourself," she said. "You were taken. There is a difference. And everything that was taken, it is still here. It was always here, in you." She pressed her hand over his, over the open pages of his journal full of unanswered questions. "Now," she said, "you can stop asking who you are and start remembering. This is what the science has given back to a people who never truly lost it. Not the truth itself, because the truth was always carried in the bones and the blood and the stories told by firelight, but the language, the undeniable, irrefutable, scientific language that the modern world demands before it will listen. Africa is the mother of all humanity, and her children, all of them, everywhere, carry her in every cell of their bodies. When the first humans looked up at this same sky, this exact sky, these same stars, they did not feel small. They felt connected. They understood in the way that people understand things before language gives them names, that they were part of something infinite, that the light above them and the earth below them and the blood moving through them were all made of the same ancient material, and they were right. Every atom in the human body was forged in the heart of a star. Every human being alive today shares a common ancestor who stood on African soil and looked up at this sky. We are all, every one of us, children of the same mother, children of the same stars. The science has drawn the map, and the map leads here, always here, to the red earth and the wide sky and the fire that has been burning since the beginning of human time. This is not a story that needed science to validate it. The people of this continent have always known who they are. They have always carried the knowledge of their own depth, their own complexity, their own extraordinary contribution to the human story. But for centuries, that knowledge was attacked, suppressed, mocked, stolen. And so today, when the laboratories and the geneticists and the peer-reviewed journals of the modern world line up to confirm what grandmothers have whispered to grandchildren since the beginning of time, it is not just a scientific finding. It is a reckoning. It is a restoration. It is the world being forced, finally, to look at Africa and say, "You were first. You were always first." Not first in a race, not first in a competition, but first in the most profound sense. The origin, the source, the mother of all that followed. And to every person of African descent who has ever been made to feel lesser, to feel erased, to feel like their history began in chains, hear this clearly. Your history began in the cradle of all humanity. Your ancestors built the first civilizations. Your blood carries the oldest story on earth. You did not come from nothing. You came from everything. And the earth, this ancient, patient, magnificent earth, has been holding your name in her soil all along. Kofi walked into the morning light with his journal under his arm. But he was no longer writing questions. He was carrying answers. Not answers given to him by a laboratory or a textbook, though those have their place, but answers that had always lived inside him, waiting for the moment he was still enough to hear them. We are the beginning. Not the beginning of one branch of the human family, but the root from which every branch grew. Every human being alive today, regardless of where they were born, what language they speak, what they look like, carries within them a thread of African ancestry. We are all connected. We are all, in the deepest biological sense, family. And Africa, ancient, enduring, magnificent Africa, is the home we all share. The science has spoken. The earth has always known. And now, at last, the world must listen. This is not the end of a story. This is the remembering of one that never should have been forgotten. We are Africa. We have always been Africa.